Welcome to the Mountain Man Chronicles. Be comfortable with the uncomfortable. Live, learn, and explore.
Hey, this is Paul coming at you with the next video. We're going to discuss today the topic of preparing for an overland trip. I'm about to embark on a 4-day overland trip, which we're going to follow the Custer Trail. Rayleigh and I are leaving in about a week and a half. What I'm doing this weekend is I'm prepping the Jeep, making sure I'm doing my walkthrough to make sure that everything is prepared on the Jeep and on my Mission Overland trailer. Different things that I do on my Jeep. I have a checklist, which I do use, and I'll share that with you. I found in both my professional and my outdoors life, having a checklist always helps me be prepared. I oftentimes go over prepared, but that's just part of who I am. What we're going to do is I'm going to actually walk you through with the Jeep and the trailer what I look at and different things I checked, include pulling in the garage and looking underneath. So I can kind of go you through. If you're a new overlander, this may be something that you haven't done, and I recommend doing it. I very rarely run into troubles on the trail, knock on wood. But it's always good to be prepared, so I do bring some extra tools. I do bring things like that, which is also part of my checklist. So there's a lot of checklists out there for overlanders. This is basically what I follow to walk you through. All right, as you see here, this is my 2020 Jeep Gladiator Rubicon. It's got a lift on it, metal cloak, 2-inch lift, 35-inch tires. I'll do a walkthrough at another time. As I mentioned earlier, it's really essential you do a walkthrough when you go overlanding or any kind of off-roading. The first thing I always check with are my tires. What you see here is I run on this Nitto Grappler's. Been a great tire for me on multiple rigs. Now, one of the things I look for is if there's any cupping. And if you feel the tire and you feel cupping, which you'll see in the link below what cupping is, something you should pay attention to because it'll wear out your tires first. I did go around and check all my tires. In fact, I got to put the valve stem caps back on for this and made sure they were all, and I used my trusty air gauge that I showed you before to make sure that they're all running about 35 pounds per that. I'll probably air down when I get to the trail. That's the first thing I do is I'll go through all the different tires. So we check the front ones. I've already gone around them. There's no cupping on here. They're aired about right, and they're doing really well. Again, doing the same in the rear. Just going around checking everything, looking for any hoses. Is my exhaust loose? Is there anything that I see that's out of ordinary? Any bolts I see from this side? This is just an exterior walkthrough. I like to do one thing at a time. Tires first. Check around the tires. Make sure the lug nuts are all tight. Different things like that. So I'm going to go through a torque wrench and check all my lug nuts. Make sure they're torqued right. Make sure that's set up. When we crawl underneath, I'll take a look at the spare at the same time. But right now we're focused on the tire area. From the tires, then I come to the interior. I just did an oil change on my rig, so I know the oil's fine. Always want to make sure of that. I want to see if I have anything loose here. My battery's fine. I just want to see if there's anything out of the ordinary that I notice, any big oil leaks under here, anything like that. My Jeep's been running really well, so I know it's been pretty well, but I just do a visual inspection. Is there anything I should be concerned about? Are the fluids looking good, which they are? Is there anything I see that's piling up underneath? I haven't seen any water or anything dripping underneath. Just do a visual inspection of your motor. I didn't inspect anything, but I do want to look at it. And it's a stock motor, so I don't really spend with not many miles on it. It's only got like 30,000 miles on it. So I didn't expect anything wrong with it, but I want to walk through it. I want to make sure that my trip goes smooth. Now, normally what I would do is also check my air filter, but when I did the oil filter, I did check that. So it's something to keep mind of. And I'd love to see in your comments below, what do you check in your motor compartment when you look at it? I typically will check, make sure my oil's fine, which I did. I just changed it, check my air filter, make sure my battery's doing well, make sure all the rest of my fluids are okay. I know they are, so I know that's content. Please let me know. Let me know what you check. All right, so let's talk about what we look around underneath. My Jeep's a little dirty from the snow, but you'll see is what I'm looking for. Is there any oil leaks? Is the drive shafts loose? How's my exhaust look? Is there any bolts loose, right, as I'm coming through? Some say you can go through and torque everything down. That's an option if you'd like to do it. Not one that I do a lot of, but it is optional for you if you want to do that. That's purely up to you. What I am going to do is I'm looking in there, see if I see any oil, anything coming down from the oil pan, which I don't. Do I see anything that I've really, that's going to worry me? No, really don't. Not under here. It doesn't get used that much. Are my as we crawl to the back, we're going to look to see if the shocks are loose or anything back there. So let's crawl back there. So what I'm looking at back here is, are my airbags? Anything I see wrong with those? Nope, those seem to be pretty secure. I run airbags on this because my trailer makes it sag a little bit. Is my track bar in the back loose? No, it's not. I checked that a few minutes ago. Are my shocks loose? Nope. How are they looking? No drips around there. My shock bolts, any bolts I see loose? About once a quarter I go through and torque everything. I'm not doing that yet. I probably will at another time, and that'll be a separate video. So right now I'm just doing Overland all-around video. I did go through and torque all my cheap tires a few minutes ago. I didn't videotape that if you guys be bored watching me torque down my tires. So I'm just looking to make sure everything is set up properly, and it seems to be. So pretty content. I'm looking at everything under here. The lift was put on it and just retorqued after that, so I know that the lift and all the arms are pretty tight, because I just literally did that like 10,000 miles ago, so I know that's fine. So this is just an overall, do I see anything visually, because I just torqued a lot of these bolts. But if you haven't torqued your bolts in a while, you may want to go through and just check your suspension, make sure it's all torqued down. I had a YJ one time that I didn't torque everything down, and that's how I learned this lesson. I went wheeling and literally lost a shock. One of the brackets came loose, and the suspension was all over the place. So I learned that lesson, and this is part of the reason why I do all this, and check to make sure it's all fine. Moving to the back of the transfer case, I always check to make sure dry shafts are fine. Dry shafts freak me out. I've seen too many people break them or lose them on a trail, so I always want to make sure that they're in good condition. It's one of those things that I'm a little paranoid about, but I always take a look. And, you know, if anything, it's always good to crawl around your rig and just see what's under it and see what it's doing. One of the things I see from my Jeep that I'm going to have to do in the near future is just add some skid plating. I think skid plating is important, and it's something that everybody should do. It's amazing what you'll find on your Jeep, though, as you walk through it. We're going to go to the front and take a look at the brake brackets and stuff like that there. So we're going to just get under here and make sure everything's tight. Make sure that, you know, I don't see anything that's going to really bind or break or just, you know, cause me any problems, which I don't. Like I said, my Jeep's relatively stock other than the metal cloaks lift and setting that up. So, you know, I don't really anticipate any problems, but it's just good to crawl underneath, spend some time underneath your Jeep looking at it. Make sure everything's fine. If the shocks are okay. As I said, I just went through and had all this torqued. I actually did it with my guy, and I was pretty content that everything was set up and that everything's tight, because we just did it. But I'm just, you know, this is more of a visual. If it was my once a quarter, I'd actually go and hit these all and tighten to the torque specs, which I have in my drawer. But I don't need to do that because I just did it. So again, this is just a visual. I do see one hose in the front that concerns me a little bit, just the angle of it. So I'm going to go take a look at that. It's that hose right up in there. You can kind of see it's kind of weird bend. I'm going to go look at that and see if that's something that concerns me, or is that something that should come from the stock part. So that's one thing I'm seeing right now that is a bit of a concern. So that was the walkthrough of my Jeep. Like I said, the hose wasn't much of a worry. I walked through it, I checked it, seemed to be okay. There's factory netting around it, so I'm not overly concerned about that. What we're going to move on to next is what I look at in my trailer. It's very similar. So in that segment, what we did is we looked at basically what I look at on the Jeep, right? So the things I check on the Jeep as a summary for that are going to be, you know, inspecting the tires are very important to make sure you have tread in the road. Inspecting the suspension, I want to make sure I don't have any sticks or anything out of the ordinary with that, which I didn't. That all looked fine. So, you know, I'm checking the control arms. I would torque those if I haven't done it in a while. So, you know, different things that I would check that. I'm looking for damage. I'm looking for wear. I'm looking for anything like that. Then I'm going to check the brakes, which I did go for a brake check. You know, just cruise, hit the brake. I went around town. They look like they're all working perfectly. And then I went through the undercarriage. You know, I looked at this to make sure the vehicle was fine. Looked at, make sure I didn't have anything weird there. That all was fine. Then, as you saw, we walked through it. Earlier, I did check the coolant, the brakes, the brake fluid. I went through all that, make sure there's no leaks. Looked at my serpentine belt. That was all fine. You know, looking through everything. Everything looks like it's ready to go and good to go for me. No check engine lights. There's nothing like that. My turn signals are working. So I know the Jeep, when I hook it up to the trailer, is going to be great. And then I did a final walkthrough, right? Look for anything that was damaged, my fenders, my roof, anything like that, which I know it's not. I don't drive enough. So basically what you're doing is I'm kind of sending my Jeep off, giving it the Paul Piazza stamp of approval, right? So I want to make sure that it's got, hey, it's okay. You know, the mountain man stamp of approval is very important on a vehicle, or your own stamp of approval. That way, it's kind of like, you know, the jet pilot as he walks around his plane before he takes off, right? It's his last responsibility to make sure he's catching anything out of the ordinary. And that's what you want to do before you go, to make sure you have a safe overlanding trip. Next, we're going to go through the trailer. What I look through on a trailer itself, and I'm referring to my checklist, right? So again, I'm going to look at the tires, so I'm not going to take you through that. I've already done, you know, I'm going to do that really quick. I'm going to look at the suspension, which I'll probably crawl with you under the Jeep. We can take it, or under the trailer, so you can take a look at my suspension, what it looks like from underneath. Again, I have a Mission Overland trailer. It's a 2021. This will be its like second long haul for an overlanding trip. So we're going to do kind of an overview of that. We're going to inspect the suspension, make sure everything's set there, make sure that the suspension is looking fine. We're going to check the brakes, make sure the trailer brakes are working, and we're going to make sure they're working correctly, which I'll probably do next weekend because I'm not hooking up the trailer yet, so I guess still got a week and it's supposed to be pretty cold. I'm going to check the hitch and the coupler. We'll take you through that. We'll check the lights when I hook it up. We won't do that. I did an interior check. I'll take you through the interior, show you that. I've been doing that. I got one more add-on to do the interior. Maybe I'll walk you guys through that in a video. So let's go take a look what everything looks like on the trailer. One of the things you're going to want to do is check your batteries. I know mine are fine. I recently installed 2 brand new lithium batteries. I have a 50-watt DC converter in there, so it converts it from the car over through the charged batteries, as well as 300 watts of solar on the roof. That's all wired up. So I know that's fine because I've already tested it all. That was one of the things I did last week. Took my voltmeter to it, tested different things. That's working. And why do you check things? Well, here's a good example of this needs to be greased. So doing my walkthrough, I got to go find my grease gun, and I'm going to have to grease that. I'm going to do that right now. So we'll take some grease to that. So that's one thing I got to fix right now. Wiring all looks fine. Cables are fine. I just put a new chain on, so I know that's okay. So in the interior, you can see our bed setup. Sorry about the messy covers. The dogs just jumped in it. I'm going to check the lights. The outside lights work. The water pump's working. The interior lights are working on and off. I have voltage. ARB radio works. We're relatively packed to go. This is in the bed configuration. Everything's been checked out. It's not a lot to check out on the interior of this vehicle. I just make sure the batteries are working and all that. I don't have to check the heater, but sometimes I would check the heater as well. The max air fan's working, so I know we're pretty much good to go inside the trailer. So you can see in summary, you know, we checked the outside, we checked the inside, and we checked overview of the trailer. So we made sure we got everything. I did find something. I got to grease that front hitch. Very important to put some grease in there. As far as my packing list goes, you know, I'm going to make sure I have my spare tires fine. Both trailer and Jeep are both fine. I looked at both those in this video, so you want to make sure your spare tires. Don't forget that. Make sure you bring some kind of tire inflator, some kind of jumping cable. You know, long story short, my second trip out in this trailer, I did have a battery that went dead. I left it connected to my Jeep. It drained my Jeep battery, but I had my jumper, and I was ever jumping it. Anybody that owns any kind of new JK, or sorry, a JL or the truck knows that secondary battery is a pain. So if any of you want to know how to bypass it, it's actually relatively easy. I found it on the web. I highly recommend that. I want to make sure that I have propane. Both my propane tanks have been filled up on my trailer. Our food and water, you saw my water jugs down there, were filled up. The ice chest inside the trailer. We got the secondary ice chest because it is a little bit of a longer trip. I bring my GPS device. I bring my map. That's going to be a separate video on some of the tools I use when I do this. Personal items like toiletries, medications, sunglasses, hat, and sunscreen. Very important to bring. We bring a game set that has a wide variety of games because my wife and I like to play games while we're out there. We'll play cards. We'll bring things like that. Trash bags are really important. You saw, if you didn't, I have a trasharoo on the front of my trailer. Been really handy. That's a game changer for me. It's great because I just line it and bring whatever in it, and I carry some other stuffs in it. So you want to make sure you bring that. Insect repellent's really important. A lot of bugs here in South Dakota. So we make sure we bring insect repellent. And so, you know, the main thing is, like I said at the beginning, I pack quite a bit, but I try not to overpack. The key things that I always make sure I have is a good tool set. So I have a tool roll that's packed, which you saw in the back of my Jeep. Some way to lift my Jeep. I have a bottle jack and I have the high lift. I may get rid of the high lift. I haven't used it in years. It's just one of those things that I have a hard time letting go of. It kind of goes back to the old days when I four-wheeled. High lifts are a pain, but they have saved my butt both as a come along and as a jack. So, I have a hard time getting rid of them to use that. What I recommend, again, I'm going to circle back to my analogy of, be like a jet pilot. Do your walk-arounds. Do your checklists. Make sure you have one. I'll include my checklist here that I've went through. I know I talked pretty quickly today because I think this is kind of redundant for most of us. It's just a handy reminder. This is going to be part of my series on, what do I do before I go on a trip? What do I do during a trip? And leading up to our scout trip for the Custer Trail, which will be the long-term trip in September. So I hope to tie this all together in kind of like a little series for you. Prepping, going on a trail, coming back, cleaning up, and closing out. I hope you enjoyed the videos. Thanks for watching.